Hi everyone, welcome to my channel, Leadership for a Crazy World. And a crazy world it is. I can't believe I'm doing this, but here I am. Let's do it. The whole purpose of the channel is to talk about what kind of leadership is needed to address the problems and challenges we face in the world today. Now, to illustrate how crazy it is, a personal story. About a year ago, I met the president of South Korea. We had a brief chat. He said that he had read my book and enjoyed it very much. Now, I wanted to ask a follow-up question. What did you find particularly helpful? But before I could ask, his aide whisked him off somewhere. Now, as of this moment, the moment of making of this video, he has been dethroned, impeached for making a strategic blunder politically. And he's sitting in a South Korean jail awaiting his fate. Leadership for a crazy world. It's so easy to get it wrong. Whether you are running a country or you're an executive in a company or a community activist. How do you provide leadership or be an agent of positive change with all these forces, strong currents, shifting winds, changing demands, increasing expectations, and actually get meaningful work done? That's why I've set up the channel. That's the purpose, to address these questions and to explore the challenges and demands of real leadership and being an agent of positive change. Now, as this is my first video, let me introduce myself. I taught leadership at Harvard University for 20 years, and I was a graduate student there for another 8 years. I've also twice been a visiting professor at the National University of Singapore, the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy, and I've been wrestling with questions pertaining to what is good leadership throughout my adult life. I've conducted research and consulting all around the world, working with governments, businesses, international organizations, including the United Nations, the World Bank, and various social service organizations and NGOs. Now, I've interviewed many world leaders at the Center for Public Leadership at Harvard Kennedy School. I've studied tribal groups in the Pacific, in Borneo, in Madagascar. I've lived deep in the jungle with nomadic hunters and gatherers, looking at traditional authority dynamics and community bonding and social change. Now at Harvard, my colleague and mentor and friend was and is Professor Ronald Heifetz. We have worked together, taught together for decades. He is without a doubt one of the best educators and thinkers on leadership. His work informs my work. Primarily, we look at how to exercise leadership to address adaptive challenges, complex challenges that require a shift in how people think and behave, often in their values and priorities. This kind of change or problem-solving work is called adaptive work. Because of this focus on adaptive work versus technical, routine work or quick fixes, our approach is often called adaptive leadership, which is fine. But you really want to think of it as the practice of good leadership and the orchestration of problem solving or change or innovation for complex challenges. Now, complex challenges often require imagination, experimentation, and the engagement of multiple groups. So you have to cross boundaries and generate connections and include others in the adaptive work. Now, adaptive challenges can be very specific and local to your community or company, or they can be very broad and general. Let me briefly talk about 7 broad general adaptive challenges that require leadership from all of us in varying degrees. Number 1, how do you deal with the growing tribalism we see in the world today? Given the anxiety, the uncertainty, and the frustration people feel, the tribal impulse has been activated and people seek safety, security, and identity in their respective enclaves, whether these enclaves or groups exist virtually, online, politically, or literally in our neighborhoods. Well, there are wonderful benefits to the tribal impulse in terms of team building and bonding and creating a sense of community. The danger is it can generate divisions and create an unhealthy us versus them dynamic. Now, number 2, which is connected to that, is the challenge of how do you address shared, complex, messy problems. Given the power of the tribal impulse and given the reality that so many of the problems we face today are shared multidimensional, multifaceted problems, and no single group can resolve them acting alone, What kind of leadership is needed to get people to transcend the tribal impulse, cross boundaries, build bridges, and establish a network of partnership? This has enormous implications for leadership and change. Now, the third challenge, which is connected to the two previous points, is how do you deal with the demands and challenges of globalization? Globalization has become a pejorative negative term. There's a lot of problems with globalization. Over the last few decades, we've enjoyed tremendous benefits, but it can be frustrating at times. We are now seeing a significant amount of deglobalization going on. People, institutions, even corporations are in retreat. A classic example is the United Kingdom withdrawing from the European Union and the Make America Great movement in the United States. Now, I'm not criticizing these movements, but simply highlighting that they are a response to unresolved adaptive challenges in the larger environment. So what is the work of leadership? To make globalization and our institutions work better, or to retreat and work to make our immediate or local groups work better? Perhaps we can do both. Now, speaking of globalization, I recently worked with a large multinational company, offices all around the world. The CEO described to me their challenge. He said, we're an international company, but we're not a global company. I said, what's the difference? He said, every office and region does its own thing. We're not leveraging off the talent, the knowledge, and the connections that we have. There's very little cross-fertilization or integration to grow the business collectively. Our challenge is to become a global company. And to do that, we have to cultivate a global mindset in our executives and invent practices and processes that truly make us a global leader in all aspects of our business and not just an international player. The fourth challenge: how do we deal with surprise events? We've seen an increase in surprise events, the butterfly effect. A problem in one part of the world spreads, impacts the larger world. As with the pandemic, these surprise events often generate a crisis, such as the Los Angeles fires, for example. These sudden, unanticipated crises challenge governments, challenge communities, challenge all of us. What kind of leadership is needed to address a crisis or a sudden disruption? How do you access valid, useful, reliable information so you can make informed choices? How do you ensure powerful groups don't exploit a crisis for their advantage? How do you calm people, be honest with people, and learn your way together through the foggy terrain of a crisis? How do you contain the rage and ensure people don't become excessively angry, emotional, or vindictive and act out and scapegoat others? And after the fact, very important, how do you do a thorough and honest diagnosis to appreciate why the crisis emerged in the first place and what might have been done to prevent it? And the fifth challenge. This is the leadership challenge associated with the advent of new technologies. How do you deal with the array of new disruptive technologies like artificial intelligence, quantum computing? Yes, we'll have quantum commuting one day. I look forward to that. Quantum computing, bioengineering, gene manipulation, the list goes on. We are seeing the convergence of machine intelligence with human intelligence. There are abundant possibilities and abundant dangers, potential threats. It's a brave new world we are entering, and the implications for jobs, lifestyles, human development are significant at so many levels. This is a huge leadership test. And the sixth challenge is the creative challenge. How can you face these complex and often novel challenges creatively and pursue a higher aspiration that adds value to the world, value to our institutions, value to our communities, and helps us collectively to advance? For many of the problems we face, we've exhausted our repertoire of skill and strategy. We've hit a wall. So how do you stimulate enough creativity and sustain that creativity and channel it towards positive outcomes, a breakthrough of some sort? Now, creative work needs groups, needs people with diverse perspectives, diverse experience, even diverse values. So how do you manage the creative process and the array of experiments and inevitable conflicts and failures associated with creative work? How do you manage diversity, the interaction of competing people and perspectives and expertise, and make it work to ensure that it doesn't blow up, but it leads to an innovation or a creative outcome. And, might I suggest, how do you ignite a creative Renaissance process, like what happened during the Renaissance of Florence, Italy, 600 years ago, where there were major breakthroughs in science, art, engineering, architecture, music, even governance. This kind of Renaissance thinking, Renaissance process, Renaissance leadership is needed today in so many sectors, in so many aspects of human affairs, as the stakes are very high. By the way, the creativity of the Florence Renaissance was triggered in response to the horrors of the Black Plague that decimated Europe. It was not a one-off plague, it kept coming back. The leadership work of Florence was to ask, given how bleak life is, might we be able to create something that transcends that bleakness, something that contributes to the uplifting of the human spirit, the flourishing of communal life, something that promotes beauty, justice, human development, and a positive, forward-looking creative attitude. Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci, Raphael, Brunelleschi, hundreds of others answered the call and participated in that work. Now, I say participated because there was a process. There was leadership to ignite, to stimulate the process. There was a holding environment, a container to support and protect the creative space. I'll talk more about that in a later video. There's much to learn from the Florence Renaissance. But anyway, who is doing that work today? The seventh and final challenge is the moral challenge. How can you surface and address the moral dilemmas embedded in all these changes and demands? The moral quandaries are significant. It's not easy to know what is right, what is wrong, or what course of action will generate the most value. But there are serious consequences if we mess up. There's a lot of grey areas, and given the grey areas, populists or thoughtless characters, malevolent characters can and do exploit the fears and the uncertainty of people. So the moral challenge raises questions around how do we reason about our problems and choices? Who do we listen to for advice? Who do we include in the problem-solving and decision-making process? Now, there seems to be a disturbing trend these days where we put tech entrepreneurs or tech billionaires or billionaires of any sort for that matter, we put them on a pedestal and say, great one, you're a success. What should we do? Fix this problem for us. Great one, you're a visionary. So what is the right vision going forward? These challenges are the challenges of all of us, not a select few. This is our work. These moral dilemmas, ethical challenges, adaptive challenges, the heavy lifting is our work that we have to do. So what are the features of a moral compass, or at least a moral process, to guide us in this problem-solving, decision-making work? These are the sort of questions that I'll be addressing through this channel. Now, I want this channel to be educational, informative, interesting, engaging, and entertaining. To do it, I'll approach it in 4 different ways, 4 different themes. Number 1 is leadership and current events, whether it's business, politics, or social change, culture, new technology, things happening in the world. I'll present a perspective and try to make sense of what is happening and explore what kind of leadership is needed or is being exercised. What are the adaptive challenges that need to be addressed? For example, in many places, the trust people have in their politicians, their authority figures, is pretty low. So clearly something is not working. Now, it's interesting with politics, with elections. You think it's about choosing a leader who is going to advance the well-being of the community. Someone stands on a pedestal, they make a lot of promises, they kiss a bunch of babies, and they say, vote for me, I'll be a better leader than the other guy. It's often nothing more than the art of seduction. So what often happens, we elect someone to represent our tribe, our interests, someone we like who has a dose of charisma at the expense of dealing with reality and facing tough challenges. So the official has little understanding of what real leadership is or what adaptive challenges are, and the cycle of frustration continues. The whole process is often used to bypass the real work of change and progress. So perhaps we shouldn't be looking for a single leader. We all have to step up and do that work. Now, in fact, you don't even have to be the top dog to exercise leadership. Anyone, in varying degrees, of course, can exercise leadership and be an agent of change. And the second focus of the channel is to extract lessons from history. We'll look at moments in the past, recent and distant, when important adaptive work was done, when leadership was exercised, also when the quality of leadership was seriously lacking and people avoided the important work and things got worse. For example, one of the things that irritated me at the Harvard Kennedy School of Government was how enchanted many of my American colleagues were with Winston Churchill. They adored him. Could say no wrong about Churchill. Yes, Churchill did some great things. He was the right man at the right time during World War II. But other times in his life, his leadership was lacking, even downright appalling. He was a stubborn, arrogant man who made blunders. Now, admittedly, you can't get it right all the time. Yes, he is an interesting fellow who operated during interesting times, and we can learn from his successes, and we can also learn from his failures. Now, the point in talking about history is not to bore you with details, but to extract relevant lessons to help us deal with our problems today. History is a rich pool, even a rich tool to draw on if we know how to use it and analyze it. Now, the third focus of the channel is to present ideas, concepts, and principles to enhance your leadership capacity, to take it to another level, and to help you in your change agent work, whether in business, government, the community, whatever it might be. This will be relevant across all these sectors. Now, the focus will not be just on leadership from the top, from that dominant authority position, but include leadership from the sidelines, from the middle, from the bottom, from the margins, from the center. It's about how to be an effective and dynamic agent of change, exercise some degree of leadership from whatever position you find yourself or choose to contribute. Now, at Harvard, I developed and ran what we called the Global Change Agent Program. People came from all around the world to participate, learn from one another, share their challenges, share their failures, and explore what they might do when they returned home. So I want this channel to be helpful, developmental, just like the Global Change Agent Program was. As I'm no longer teaching at Harvard, this is my forum, my platform for sharing with you ideas on leadership and change. But I also want this channel to be a call to action. We've got a lot of work to do to make this planet a better place and to make our institutions work, to function in a way that adds greater value. And the fourth focus of the channel will be the occasional podcast, a long-form discussion with people from around the world that I think have something to offer as it pertains to helping you better exercise leadership or be that agent of change that you aspire to be in this crazy world. Now, already I'm lining up some interesting people, so I think you will enjoy it. So, this is going to be an exciting journey, and I want you to be a part of it. Subscribe to the channel. Join the conversation in the comment section below. If there are things you would like me to talk about, let me know. I'll be putting out a video on a regular basis. There'll be maybe one every week, a few every month, certainly. I'll give it my best shot. So one more thing. I have to say this in wrapping up. I began by telling you that I met the president of South Korea more than a year ago. And he told me that he had read my book and enjoyed it. As of this moment, he has been impeached and he sits in a South Korean jail. Not exactly a good endorsement for my book. But between you and me, I don't think he actually read the book. If he did, and if he understood it, he would not be sitting in a jail today. So, with a degree of hesitation, I would like to suggest that you actually read my books and the books by Heifetz and Linsky and other colleagues that talk about adaptive leadership and the demands of leading in this crazy world. Read the books listen to the videos, internalize the lessons, and you should do well. Thanks for listening, and good luck in your leadership work. See you next time.